Welcome to the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. In the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show, we are joined by special guests talking about their experiences, the realities of investigating crimes, plus those who have experienced horrendous trauma. Police, first responders, military, and victims of crime share their stories. Hi, I'm John J. Wiley. In addition to being a broadcaster, I'm also a retired police sergeant. Be sure to check out our website, letradio.com, and also like us on Facebook. Search for the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Calling us from Los Angeles, California, Al Moreno on the phone. Al is a former Los Angeles Police Department police officer. He's also the owner of Global Investigations and VIP Security Services, and he is an author. He wrote a book called LA's Last Street Cop, Surviving Hollywood Freaks, the Aryan Brotherhood, and the LAPD's homicidal vendetta against me. Al, thanks so much for being a guest on the show. Very much appreciated.
It's wonderful to be on your show, and thank you.
You've been a busy guy. Before we get into details of your career, and there's a lot of things to talk about, tell people about your book, where they can get more information, where they can buy it, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, it's on Amazon, and just click on, the title, LA's Last Street Cop, and, the information will come up, and you can go ahead and order it from there. Excellent.
So do a Google search for... I found it easier just to type in LA's Last Street Cop, and it pops up on Google. You can find it that way. What is the book about? It's about your career, obviously.
Correct. It's about a story of a kid raised in the hood. In my case, it was in South Central Los Angeles, and it bordered Watts. And we were raised in a home under 800 square feet with 11 kids. We were the poorest, family on the block. When I went to school, I had both an undiagnosed case of dyslexia and dyscalculia, which is a neurological problem where you have problems reading and ciphering out, arithmetic or math. And to add insult to injury, I also, from the 2nd to 6th grade, was diagnosed with a very rare disease called Lake Elvis-Perthes. So for 2.5 years, I was on crutches and a sling, and another 2 years, I was on a Forrest Gump type brace on my left foot and an elevator shoe. And I was a DNF student all through school, so it wasn't a whole lot of fun. When I say all through school, I'm talking about grade school and high school. So in the 12th grade, I got kind of just, fed up with it. What was the point? So I dropped out of school. And then I got in trouble with the law 3 separate times. I was arrested. After the arrest, at the height of the Vietnam War, I joined the Marine Corps and went to Vietnam, was with the India Company, 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines as a radio man and fire team leader. After my service in Vietnam, I came home and applied for the Los Angeles Police Department. And it took me 5 years to get on from 1970 to 75. I was disqualified 9 separate times, all for erroneous medical, reasons. Anyhow, I fought them, and I got on in 1975. Once I got on, then I just came into my own. I was just born to be a cop. And straight away, I excelled in every one of my assignments. And then in 1978, I was one of 40 officers from the entire department picked to work LAPD's first ever gang suppression unit called Operation Central Bureau Crash. We worked 5 of the 18 geographical areas that were mostly plagued with gang murders, and that would be South Central Los Angeles and East LA. I, again, excelled in my unit, and at the 5.5-year juncture had accumulated over 71 commendations, most of them for disarming gang members without using lethal force. And at one point, the unit commander started cooking the books because the stats were just absolutely going crazy as to the number of gang-related crimes. So he was catching from his bosses, and then he started basically restructuring what constituted a gang-related crime and what have you. And it got so bad that half the unit just bailed out. It was just, the lack of integrity was just awful. Well, I'm kind of stubborn. I stayed. I fought it. And so he transfers me out of the unit. I grieve him. I get back onto the unit. And he calls me in his office and basically says that, I'm done. So I went before the board of, I went to the bureau commander, and because I needed some kind of backup, and I told him what was going on in the unit, and he said, "Okay, Al, we knew what was going on, but nobody would have the reproductive organs enough to come up and tell us. Is there anybody that'll support your allegations?" And I says, "Well, we have 4 supervisors, and 2 of them came forward, and they threw their careers under the bus because they backed me up." So the commander looked at the allegations and was going to, there was word out that there was going to be a board of inquiry and heads were going to roll. And just at that time, I was working homicide. I got beeped up on a weekend. It was a drive-by murder. And one of the new guys came up. We couldn't find my partner to work with me. Anyhow, we arrested one of the 3 shooters that cut a 16-year-old kid in half with a sawed-off shotgun. And while I was interviewing him, I pushed him against the wall, playing the good guy, bad guy routine. And the new guy that had come into the unit just basically said that I had physically assaulted that arrestee under color of authority, and that he was going to the old man with it, which was my boss. And 2 weeks later, I went water skiing to the Colorado River with a bunch of cops and stewardess and nurses, and just kind of letting our hair down. And we walked into a bar, unbeknownst to us, it was a hangout for the Aryan Brotherhood, one of the 3 major prison gangs in the United States. So we said, we better get out of here. And as we were leaving, this one guy came up, grabbed me. His name was a.k.a. the Skull Crusher, that had just been paroled from prison for cutting his wife's hand off with an axe. The fight was on, and after the fight, he came at us with a sawed-off shotgun. We managed somehow to get away and without getting murdered. So the lieutenant got these 2 allegations that I'm talking about, the off-duty fight push of the gang member, and ordered a internal affairs investigation. And at the time, he was looking at a board of inquiry, so this was the perfect avenue for them to get rid of me. So they got internal affairs involved, and they skewed the investigation, and the Board of Rights was equally as dirty. And prior to getting fired, during the investigation, 2 of the IED investigators interviewed the ex-convict at his home in Ontario, California, and he told them that he had found out through Emma, the unit that I was working, and that he was going to kill me. So that fell within the preview of attempted murder. They didn't arrest him. They just let him go.
That's crazy right there. They just let this guy go, and he had pulled a full-fledged attempted murder on you and your buddies. Well, principally myself, but what is extraordinary about this, Jay, is that when he told them to their face that he was going to murder me, he satisfied basically the statute for attempted murder, which means is that you take an overt act in the commission of killing somebody, and astonishingly, they didn't take him into custody. Well, we're going to take a short break. We are talking with Al Moreno, former LAPD. He's got a lot to tell you. This is the Law Enforcement Show. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. I want to tell you about a product, actually a line of products, that have changed my life dramatically. Juice Plus health products. I know many of you, like me, are skeptical about claims made for these nutritional supplements. However, these Juice Plus products have made a world of difference for me. The simplest, cheapest, least expensive product they have. As a result of taking it, a chewable berry flavored product, I've had full night's sleep every night and 0 leg cramps. I know, doesn't seem like a lot, but getting good night's sleep and having a stable mood helps me quite a bit. You can get more details about Juice Plus products at letpops.com. That's letpops.com. And for those of you looking for a great business opportunity, check out letpops.com. Back to our conversation with Al Moreno. Al is a former Los Angeles Police Department police officer. He's also the author of the book LA's Last Street Cop, Surviving Hollywood Freaks, the Aryan Brotherhood, and the LAPD's homicidal vendetta against me. Al, before we went to break, you're talking about this guy who's part of the Aryan Brotherhood, well-known, huge prison gang nationwide that basically tried to kill you. And somehow an internal affairs investigation was launched against you because of this and another incident. Take us from what happened from there.
Well, after the internal affairs investigators interviewed him because of the off-duty fight at the Colorado River, like I said, part of their interview was basically to find out what happened. But this ex-con was on parole, so he started obviously telling them lies and saying that I had struck him, and it wasn't warranted and what have you. But anyhow, to make a long story short, they got what they needed because they were directed by, their bosses in internal affairs to find out what happened. But what is extraordinary about it is that once the ex-con told them that he had gotten their buddies, which is L.A.P.D, which is the Mexican mafia, to find out where I was working, so that he could kill me. And it sounds extraordinary, and if I didn't have the documents from IAD, I couldn't blame anybody if they didn't believe it. But
it's not that far-fetched. People that have, I've had death threats against me that came through the Baltimore City jail and supposedly contract hit and everything else. And for the outsider who's not in law enforcement, it sounds bizarre. And I'll admit, for some people that work in law enforcement, it sounds crazy. But for me, you tell me this, it doesn't sound bizarre at all. What strikes me as odd is how does the Mexican mafia get involved in this and basically contract this guy?
Well, it's a well-known fact. I worked gangs for 4 years, and I was, I'm a court-tested expert, superior court as a gang expert. And of the three major godfathers in the prison system throughout the United States, you have La-M, which is the Mexican mafia, controls all the Latin gangs in all of the U.S. Then you have the Aryan Brotherhood that basically controls all the skinheads, and then you have the Black Guerrilla family that controls all the black gangs. So the Mexican mafia and the Aryan Brotherhood, they kind of have each other's back, and they help each other in their, in the sort of malfeasance in what they do. And so the Aryan Brotherhood, this prison gang member or ex-con, the guy that I got in a fight with at the Colorado River, asked them to see if they had some sources they could find out where I worked, and they found out that I was working gangs. They told the Aryan Brotherhood and this Aryan Brotherhood gang member, and the hit was on. So the department, instead of doing what they normally do under an extraordinary circumstance like that, is where they would automatically get our metropolitan division to basically watch me 24/7 and my family as well. Then they would get robbery homicide division to initiate a investigation, get a wiretap, and once he was ready to do what he's going to do, they would have the guys from our another specialized unit called SIS, follow this guy 24/7 and take him into custody. They did nothing, zero, which is just absolutely shocking.
Would it be safe to say that, I don't know what vernacular they use in Los Angeles, but in Baltimore you had people who were the golden boys or the golden child, and then you had the troublemakers, and then we called them real police. And the real police weren't brown nosers. They didn't do any of that stuff, but they were oftentimes in trouble with the administration. And they weren't because they were doing bad stuff. It wasn't because they're criminals, none of that stuff. It just, they weren't going to toe the political line, and they often found themselves in trouble. Would that be a fair description of how you were?
You nailed it, Jay. That's exactly what happened. Prior to the, I call it the Colorado River incident with the Aryan Brotherhood off-duty fight that we had, and then pushing that gang member after he had cut a 14-year-old kid in half with a sawed-off shotgun, the lieutenant was catching from City Hall, the mayor's office, and upper management because the statistics were going completely crazy. And what I mean by that is that the number of gang-related crimes in the city were just absolutely going crazy. The city of Los Angeles is acknowledged as the gang capital of the world.
Oh, yeah.
So they get, what the department does is that they handpicked 40 super cops for the entire unit to work and to, create a gang suppression unit. But the math wasn't right at the jump. I mean, you have over 450 gangs in Los Angeles with anywhere from 60 to 70,000 gang members. So you got 40 super cops versus 4 divisions of gangs. We were doing a terrific job. But so the lieutenant starts cooking the books, rewriting the structure of what constituted a gang-related crime, and that's where I just couldn't stand it anymore, the lack of integrity. And that's when I went to the bureau commander, kind of like a Serpico thing. You roll over the department for doing something that is just shocking, and I paid for it with my job.
And that's, unfortunately, that happens. That happens far more often than people realize. And before someone gets a wrong impression, and they think of, like you mentioned, Serpico or Princess City or some of the things. In my police career, I never encountered a dirty cop. And when they made themselves known, they were arrested or fired. What happened far more often was you had cops who were doing a good job, that were doing their job, got in trouble doing their job because they're dealing with the hardest core criminals out there. And if they didn't toe the party line, they wound up butting heads with the admin, or we call them the gold brim hat guys. And oftentimes they were shuttled off to lousy assignments. They were transferred out of great divisions, great departments, great units that they worked hard to get into, or were fired.
Well, listening to you, it's just abundantly obvious that you know exactly, how the system has worked. And again, evidently, it just isn't in Baltimore. I mean, I guess it's through all the major cities. If you get a hardworking cop with a pure heart about putting his life out in the line, 24/7 for his community, then you see some malfeasance in the job, and it just doesn't resonate with you because that's not the way law enforcement is supposed to be. So, you stick your neck out, you report the malfeasance, and, rains down on you.
Yeah,
so it's done all over the U.S.
It sure is. And Los Angeles is kind of a bellwether city. You mentioned earlier, it's the home of all the gangs, and they have their control over gangs throughout the United States. We're talking with Al Moreno, former Los Angeles Police Department police officer, and more. This is the Law Enforcement Show. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
I have some exciting news to share with you. You are going to love my Your Diet Do-Over Do-It-Yourself course on harmonywithfood.com, which means you could do everything at your own pace. I put my heart and soul into this course. Have you been on every diet there is only to gain the weight back? If your relationship with food is, not that good, you should purchase the Your Diet Do-Over course. Go over to harmonywithfood.com, click the Your Diet Do-Over tab, and get started today.
You can find us on Facebook. Look for and like the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show Facebook page. Return conversation with Al Moreno on the Law Enforcement Show. Al is a former Los Angeles Police Department police officer, and he's also a combat veteran, United States Marine Corps, Vietnam veteran, and he is the author of a book called L.A.'s Last Street Cop, Surviving Hollywood Freaks, the Aryan Brotherhood, and the L.A.P.D.'s Homicidal Vendetta Against Me. Before we went to break, Al, we were talking about, and I've seen it, there are reports of it happening forever, and we've got reports and articles on our website, just go to letradioshow.com, of crimes being downgraded. And this is something that comes from on high. People forget, and here's a little basic lesson in civics. Most police departments are run by the mayor. The mayor picks their police commissioner. The police commissioner promotes the staff that he or she wants, that are going to toe their line, and all the orders come from the mayor on down. It doesn't start a street level cop will work its way up. It's the other way around. And when crime gets too crazy, I'm not going to name cities right now, it is not uncommon for them to say, Part 1 crimes, which are the violent felonies, and Part 2, Part 3, we'll downgrade them as much as we can, from assault and robbery to just assault or to a theft. And little things like that, while they may not seem like a lot, when you've got a massive organized crime problem with gangs like LA had back then and still does, and the numbers are being cooked, that's a real problem.
Well, it is indeed. Shockingly, after I was fired, they got these two alleged victims, one being a murderer that cut a kid in half when I pushed him against the wall when I was interviewing. There was no injury. It was just like what you see on TV. You push a guy and you leave the room, and then your partner is supposed to go, hey, you better cooperate with us.
Yeah.
And then the other situation is where I defended myself against this shotgun-wielding madman, and so that was the department's two victims, and they fired one of their historically ever hardest working cops because I blew the whistle on the corruption, which is just, to this day I still can't get wrap my head around it. I love the Los Angeles Police Department, but there are some bad players in upper management. So my problem is not with the men and women that are putting their lives out, on the line 24/7 for people they don't even know, and a lot of people that don't even like them. The L.A.P.D., the time that I was on the job, if I ever seen somebody that was doing something wrong, I'd roll them over in a second. I wouldn't tolerate it. So I've never really understood this thing about this, that you stick up for one another, and the silent code and all this kind of garbage.
I've never seen it either. I don't know of anybody in any department that's ever done. There's a big line of distinction. I remember being a young police, and I'm sure you're going to relate to this. And when you're young and you're rookie, you make stupid mistakes. You do stupid things. But I was told, if you're going to make mistakes, do them while you're doing your job, when you have good intentions. That's how you learn. If you do things that are corrupt, that are criminal, things like that, no one's going to stand for that. No one. So I've never saw a thin blue line or wall of silence where we looked the other way when people did bad stuff.
Well, yeah, unfortunately, you have, members in the community that for some reason or another, have this kind of hatred for law enforcement. And funny is that those very people are the ones that call the police more than the rest of the community. And you have, leaders in the city council and the mayor's office and the Congress and the Senate that somehow, it's like their second job is to undermine law enforcement to the community. And I've never really understood that. It's just, like I said, not to to go over the whole thing, but if I had ever seen somebody that was doing something that I thought would stain the efforts of our brothers and sisters out there, busting their butts for us, I'd roll them over in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
So I've never really understood that.
I haven't either. And these politicians that do that, I'm of the mindset or the belief that I learned a long time ago that in order to get elected to office, you have to create an enemy for the vast majority of the voters. And then you are the solution for that enemy or that threat. And when all these politicians and activists are so anti-police and they say the police department is causing all the problems in the community and everything else, none of them offers a solution. Saying, okay, if the police department's a problem and we get rid of all these cops, then what? None of them have an answer for the then what. So it's all, I think it's a ploy that they use to get elected. That's the only reason they do it.
Well, it's job security. And if they keep these, these people that we're talking about, if they basically, when I say job security, is that if they were to be genuine with the public and talk about what law enforcement really does for the community, they wouldn't have a job anymore. It's just, but it's just, I just can't say enough about what's going on today with our law enforcement. I mean, you see what's happening in New York and some of the other places where you're getting the community that is disrespecting law enforcement, to the degree that they're doing today. And then if the officers do anything, they're done. They're gone.
You are. And that comes from the top down. And I find it nauseating when I see some of the videos, for example, where they had the thing where they're throwing water on police and milk. It made me sick to my stomach. We had a very basic philosophy. And that philosophy is we respected everyone until they changed the tone of the conversation. And then there was no backing down. So to allow someone to assault you in any way, shape, or form or any level, and then to back down was sacrilege. You did not do that. And the reason we did not allow that is because being a police in most cities, you're like in a fishbowl. When someone does that to you on a post, and you can be that post every day, and they'll see you 5-6 days a week, if someone sees you doing that, then they're more apt to increase the level of violence against you.
Well, no, you're entirely correct. You hit the nail on the head. To add insult to injury, now you have this whole thing about these sanctuary cities that are embracing folks that are not supposed to be here, illegal aliens, and some of them have actually murdered Americans, raped folks. I'm not talking about the entire community, but
no.
What I'm saying is that too many of these people, are getting a pass on this thing. And now with the Los Angeles Police Department, they changed their city charter where the police chief now is basically chosen by the mayor. Prior to that, it used to be the city council. So the mayor or the chief of police and his coppers were basically, they didn't have to worry about being politicized. But today, that's the way it is, and basically the chief of police will throw his own people under the bus to placate the mayor and maintain his position, and it's just not a good thing today.
When you look back at history, there's a couple things that stand out about that. In Baltimore, in my case, years like in the 1800s, control of the department was taken away from the city and given to the state, and now the city has limited control. It's because of abuse by the city government. We had the same thing happen in New York. We've had it all over the United States. This is not just an L.A. issue. This is a national issue. And by the way, it's still occurring. We're going to take a short break, and we will be right back. If you're on the Clubhouse drop-in audio chat app, be sure to look for me and follow me. My name's John, the letter J, Wiley, W-I-L-E-Y. You can also search for @L.E.T. Radio Show. That's John J. Wiley, W-I-L-E-Y, @L.E.T. Radio Show on the Clubhouse drop-in audio chat app. This is Law Enforcement Show. I'm John J. Wiley, joined by special guest Al Moreno, former Los Angeles Police Department police officer, United States Marine Corps veteran, Vietnam veteran, and also the author of the book, L.A.'s Last Street Cop, Surviving Hollywood Freaks, the Aryan Brotherhood, and the LAPD's homicidal vendetta against me. By the way, these vendettas, they do occur. We talked earlier about how real police and that don't brown nose, that don't toe the party line, they don't play the political game, often wind up having to deal with vendettas. And that's apparently what happened to you. Before we get into the part of your conversation, you mentioned earlier you were fired basically on a word of a murderer, actually two murderers, and one was a member of the Aryan Brotherhood. Both of them hardcore criminals, both of them not altar boys. And this isn't like you walked up and rolled up on someone on the street who's a hardworking person never in trouble and brutalized them. They took the word of hardcore violent criminals against one of their own, and you were a highly commended officer.
Oh, That's correct. I had mentioned that I'm not blowing my own horn, but I mean I'm my own advocate at this juncture. Nobody else is speaking for me, so I don't have a problem telling anybody what I had done. I had worked so incredibly hard once I got into our specialized unit, OCB Crash, LAPD's first ever gang unit with 40 guys in it, and towards the end of the first year, I was working so hard that I was actually leading the gang unit in gun seizures, and those aren't radio calls. That's something from out there hunting the bad guys before they take human lives. And there was one deployment period, which is our month. It's a 28-day, string of days, and I got into this hot streak where 13 days in a row, I arrested a gang member with a gun. And on the 13th day, I arrested 2 separate gang members in one watch, both armed with .45s. It got so incredible that my 2 of my 4 supervisors called me in out of the field, told my partner to wait outside, and told me, "Listen, Al, you are making us look great, but we're concerned about your safety because of this hot streak that you're in. Now, we know that you know your stuff, but you've heard of Murphy's Law, and we'd like you to kind of take a break, come inside for a couple of DPs, cool off, because we're concerned about you." And of course, it was voluntary, and I said, "No, I'm working a hot streak. Every time you take a gun off the street from a gang member, some human being is not going to be shot or killed." And so I went back out and did what I did. Then, we've already talked about the 2 situations that gave the department an opportunity to get rid of me, because I had gone to the bureau chief, and the bureau chief was going to do this what they call an investigation. And it just at the juncture, I was told, I knew that it was just basically not going to work out well, because 2 of the 2 internal affairs investigators were overheard by one of their secretaries stating that we're going to fry Moreno's. Now, that was at the beginning of the internal affairs investigation into me pushing the gang member in the off-duty fight with the ex-con. And then 2 weeks later, I had a friend of mine that went to internal affairs and was working as one of the advocates, and he heard the advocate, who was kind of like a prosecutor for the judge at a trial board, state that Moreno is going to be fired regardless of what happens. So, the fix was in. And of course, I complained about it, and nobody said anything. And, that was the end of that. I was toast. I was gone. Another extraordinary thing is that when the Internal Affairs, like we had spoken about a minute ago, had actually told the 2 investigators to their face that he was going to murder me, the department, like I mentioned, failed to do what they have a well-established protocol for a credible threat like that. And it wasn't just like if these 2 internal affairs investigators didn't do or make the notifications that they were supposed to make. There were a total of those 2 sergeants, there were a total of 2 lieutenants, 4 captains, a bureau commander, and the chief's office that were aware of that threat. And I have the documentation, from the trial board transcripts and the internal affairs investigation that names these people. And with all of those folks involved, still, me and my family were not afforded the standard security protocol, which is just
horrifying.
Yeah, it's horrifying.
You took so many efforts and so many years to become an LA police officer. It's obvious that you were driven to do this and that you felt a calling and you weren't going to give up, and that's admirable. And by the way, before I forget, thank you for your service in the police department and thank you for your service in Vietnam. Both of those don't get the proper appreciation that they should, even to this day. It must have just have been a horrifying letdown for you, and I can't think of the right words, Al, that when you were brought to the trial board is what we called it in Baltimore, and you were terminated, you were fired. How does someone recover from that? How do you pick yourself up and say, okay, I'm going to go on to plan B?
Like I said, it took me 5 years to get on. They weren't hiring a lot of people of color when I got on the job. Today, that's not the issue. I mean, it's not that way today. But when I was getting on the job, they had a token amount of Afro-Americans and Latins and one or two, Asian kids on there. But it's totally different today. But the drive that I had to get on the LAPD, it started way back in the second grade. I remember when I was diagnosed with leg calvis at Children's Hospital, Los Angeles, and this doctor, I remember his name, Dr. Pierce, he picks me up. I was a little guy, second grader, puts me on the examining table, then he looks right into my eyes, and he goes, and what do you want to be, little man, when you grow up? And I just barked out, I want to be a policeman. So that was my goal from the second grade. And there's thank God that we have enough people even still today that still want to pursue that admirable and courageous career to protect the motherland, and its citizens from the bad guys. And it's just so when I did get fired, I mean, you talk about an honest, hard-working cop. They don't come any more hard-working, honest than myself. So, once I was terminated, in particular, the first 5 years, more so the first 2 years, I moved back home because I lost everything. And so I had to move back home into the barrio, which was, it was awful. But the reason I principally did that is because I was afraid for the safety of my mom and my brothers and sisters. My dad had already died. And Jay, for the first 2 years, and this is the God's truth, I would sit out in front of the, right on the street, sit in my car, armed to the teeth with a 44 and a 38, just scared to death that the Aryan Brotherhood or La-M was going to come by and murder my family. And I had nightmares like that for 10, 15, 20 years. So it was just awful.
I'm sorry you had to go through that. Again, where can people get more information about your book and order it?
Well, you can go to, there's a website, laststreetcop.com. You can also get the book, LA's Last Street Cop, on Amazon. It's probably the simplest way to get it.
Al, thanks so much for your service, and thanks for being a guest on the show. Very much appreciated.
Thank you so much for having me on the show, Jay.
I'd like to thank our guests for coming on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. The Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show is a nationally syndicated weekly radio show broadcast on numerous AM and FM radio stations across the country. We're always adding more affiliate stations. If you enjoyed the podcast version of the show, which is always free, please do me a favor and tell a friend or two or three. I'll be back in just a few days with another episode of the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show and Podcast. Until then, this is John J. Wiley. See ya.